Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have John Rubino, a long-term friend of mine and a frequent guest on this show. It's always good to have John with us today. Thanks, John, so much for joining us.
Hey, Jay, good to be back. Oh, I should start by apologizing in advance here, though. I've got a couple of dogs with me.
Oh.
So any minute now, you can hear some noise, and that's what it is.
Well,
I'll try to shut them up. Yeah.
Well, just as long as they bark the right bark at the right time.
Exactly. So let's see if they signal anything.
Yeah. We'll try not to agitate them. That's for sure.
Yeah.
John, I understand that you're I believe you've sold Dollar Collapse, and you're going to be doing some new things, perhaps.
Yeah, Dollar Collapse is in good hands. The new owners are doing good work with it, and I'm going to set up a Substack feed, which is basically a kind of a personal newsletter. It's a platform that lets you basically just publish your stuff, and then they handle all the back-end stuff like subscriptions and everything. So, of course, you'll be on the mailing list when I start publishing stuff, Jay, and then you and I can talk about it and maybe use that for material for our interviews and things.
Absolutely. I look forward to that, John. Always good to hear your thoughts, and that's why we're so happy that you're here again today. Today, we've titled today's show, Bitcoin, Bonds, or Gold, which is the best safe haven? Now, I want to spend most of the time on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, because that's all the talk of the day. So maybe I'd like to start out by asking you, it seems as though, fewer and fewer people are interested in gold or have been interested in gold, and especially younger people have thought of Bitcoin as an alternative, maybe one of those kind of assets that you can own that helps to reduce the risk in your portfolio like gold does. Gold has a low or negative correlation to the equity markets and so forth. But anyway, what is it about, a lot of libertarians, especially younger ones, that really seem to have been enamored by Bitcoin and by cryptos in general?
Well, the idea of cryptos in general is pretty awesome from a libertarian standpoint. It's private sector money based on technology that operates outside the framework of these corrupt central banks and spendthrift governments and their captive regulators. So it holds out the promise of society just shifting to a new sound version of money and just bypassing all the corrupt monetary authorities around the world. I love the idea of that too. It's turning out to be kind of hard to implement, though. In part because besides Bitcoin, there are now like 10,000 other crypto tokens that have been created, and with varying degrees of quality and features and et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, a lot of cryptos are being kept on private exchanges, which are kind of like fractional reserve banks, but with no regulation, so they basically can do anything they want to. And what happened this week was that FTX, a very big, very high profile exchange, turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. It was run by a bunch of kids in a mansion in the Bahamas who were basically self-dealing and buying property for themselves in their own names with customer money, among many other things. And that's thrown the crypto market into turmoil because FTX had bought stakes in a lot of other crypto enterprises. And so there's all this cross ownership out there that has to be worked out within the framework of FTX's bankruptcy proceedings. So nobody knows who else is going to blow up as this process goes on. And so a lot of cryptos are down hugely. I think Bitcoin is, 17,000 right now? It's
16 something, I think, John. I was just looking at it here. Crypto is currently at 16,149 at the moment.
Oh, okay. And that is a huge drop from
and that's up 2% today. That's up 2% today. So,
yeah. So we'll have to see how this all plays out, because it's thrown a wrench in the idea that cryptocurrencies would just become the new monetary system voluntarily, with everybody just moving into cryptos. And now a lot of the Bitcoin maximalists out there, people who believe that Bitcoin is basically the cryptocurrency and all the rest of this stuff is what they call shit coins. Yeah. In other words, stuff that's they're like .coms in 1999, who are all going to go out of business and just leave a few of the big legitimate business models standing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they say it's going to be Bitcoin. But the use case for Bitcoin now is kind of murky, because if you can't keep it on exchanges, that makes it hard to transact. And so all of this has to work itself out. I have no idea how it ends, but I think that assuming that cryptos end up as part of the future monetary system, we'll look back on this as growing pains. A new technology comes along, it has to kind of find its place in the world, and nobody knows what's going to happen exactly or what that place should be. Therefore, lots of crazy things happen. That's the stage we're in right now. So I wouldn't even presume to make a prediction about where cryptos are a year from now or 5 years from now. This just has to work itself out.
Yeah.
But as for the idea that cryptos are a big competitor with precious metals, that's certainly true. A lot of money that might have gone into gold and silver has gone into cryptos over the last decade. But I also think that that cryptos are a great entry point for future gold bugs, because to understand the point of cryptos, you have to understand fiat currencies and why they fundamentally don't work and why they're going to go away and be replaced by something else. And that's basically the same story for gold and silver. They're among the things that are liable to eventually replace today's crappy, badly managed fiat currencies. So Bitcoin and other crypto people are learning the gold bug story along the way. And I think it's going to create one big market made up of people who understand the flaws of fiat currency. So you combine crypto people and precious metals people, and you've got a pretty good-sized voting bloc out there. In other words, people who are willing to vote with their money for a future that features sound money. So I think in the end we'll end up being allies.
All right.
And
well,
I think we'll.
Yeah, let's see how it works out for sure. Lynn Alden, she's scheduled to be on this show in a couple of weeks again. She's been a pretty big proponent of cryptos, but especially Bitcoin, and she highlights the need to have a lack of central control. In other words, a lot of these cryptocurrencies, as I understand it, have somebody that's sort of in charge of them. That's not true for Bitcoin, she says, and that, however, she wouldn't want to own Bitcoin on, like through GBTC or something like that. She'd like to just own it in her own wallet so that nobody knows anything about her own crypto. Only her and, whoever she trades with would know that she's got some going or coming. So she seems to think very strongly still in favor of Bitcoin, which leads me then to a news item that I saw this morning. I mentioned to you briefly before we went on the air. Grayscale, which is the trustee for GBTC allegedly, supposedly holds and owns Bitcoin on behalf of investors. In fact, I had bought some GBTC and sold it and made a little money with it. But now according to this article, Grayscale, which is, heads up GBTC, is refusing to allow the public to know the results of an audit on the inventory of Bitcoin in GBTC. So I'm wondering what in the world is going on there. If GBTC was not actually owning all of the Bitcoins, in other words, you buy GBTC thinking you're going to get Bitcoin that way indirectly, as you do any ETF when you buy, shares of an ETF, you're buying shares of various companies or whatever. And so I'm wondering if, have you any thoughts about that? What might be going on and why Grayscale might not want to reveal the audit? Maybe there's some legal reasons in the middle of all this. I don't know.
That was very scary when they came out and said that, because you want, if you're buying an ETF that holds something, you want them to be continuously proving that they own the stuff that they claim they own. Otherwise, you're just an unsecured creditor. You have no legal right to anything that they own. It can all just disappear. Though today, one of the other big exchanges, I want to say Binance, but it could be Coinbase, I'm not sure, came out and said that they're holding for Grayscale a sufficient amount of Bitcoin to back that closed-end funds. So that's the next part of the story, and the fund is up today.
Oh, so I hope that's true.
Yeah, me too. I have some of that too, a small bit, but and the thing about closed-end funds is that they fluctuate around their net asset value. So in scary times, they can trade at a big discount to the assets that they supposedly have. So if they absolutely do have the Bitcoins that they say they do, the Grayscale fund is pretty cheap right now because it's something like a 30 or 40% discount to NAV.
Yes, I've noticed that. I wondered about that, John, and so maybe there's an opportunity if it's real, but how do you know for sure?
Well, in crisis markets, that's the tricky thing. You want to buy when there's blood in the street, but you don't want to do that too soon. You don't want to catch a falling knife. So those are the two metaphors that you need to deal with there. It's only clear in retrospect what was the perfect moment to do whatever. And John, right now, it's not that clear.
John, it comes to mind now, a lot of people have been concerned about some of the ETFs that allegedly hold gold and silver, and they would have, I don't remember which ones, but there were at least one of them, I believe, would be able to lend out the gold that it allegedly holds, and sort of play a banking game, a little bit like what's going on here in these crypto markets, fractional reserve banking almost, right? You can lend it out a bunch of times and claim you still own it. I mean, that kind of immorality, really.
Yeah, well, GLD and SLV are the two you want to avoid, apparently, because they aren't run in such a way that there's a guarantee that there's enough gold and silver there to back up their shares. PSLV, which is owned by Sprott, is supposed to be run in a much more careful way, and more people in this space trust them than trust those other two.
Yeah, and I think Sprott also has a gold fund, and they have CEF, which is a gold and silver fund as well. I mean, it's an ETF, I should say. All right, I just really wonder what might come of all this chaos. I mean, governments like to get more active, and they like to, enact more laws and more legislation, more control over our personal finances. Of course, that's why it was appealing to, as you said, a lot of the younger libertarians that like the idea of Bitcoin, because it would seem to allow them to buy and sell things without people keeping an eye on it. But, here we go again. I mean, it seems to me like what this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, was doing was pretty much what banks do, or pretty much what governments do, too.
Yeah, Jay, that's the funny thing about this exchange that just blew up. They were behaving like a regular bank. They were just doing the things banks do. And that kind of illustrates the danger that we're in today's financial system, because you've got a lot of banks out there who are behaving in some ways just as badly as these crypto exchanges. And the last thing about cryptos is that my big fear for the crypto market is that it's basically being used as a proof of concept by governments that want to set up their own versions of cryptocurrencies, the central bank digital currencies that will accomplish the opposite of what cryptocurrencies are supposed to accomplish. This will basically make our financial lives transparent to governments.
Yes.
Give them an amazing amount of control over us compared to what they have now. So they're a really bad thing. And if that's how cryptos end up, being just basically the gateway drug for central bank digital currencies, then it'll be a huge failure. I hope that's not how it plays out. But I think governments of the world may have that in mind as a goal.
Well,
as cryptos go.
It certainly seems that the World Economic Forum, in which most of the Western governments seem to be bowing to, have been talking about using a cryptocurrency, a digital currency, and each of us having a wallet, and they could find out how what our carbon footprint is, and take away some of our wealth if we expend too much carbon. I mean, this is a scary thought, but even today, I see on a tweet from somebody that Bill Gates is teaming up with the leader of New Zealand, Jacinda Jacinda Ardern to surreptitiously roll out a vaccine passport attached to digital currency. So they're really working on this thing in New Zealand, according to, I don't, if it's true, it's a frightening thought, because if they can keep us off the buses, keep us locked in our homes, do what China's doing with their population now, it seems to be, and why in the world the Western world is now thinking in those terms. I don't get it.
Yeah, the G20 actually just embraced the concept of vaccine passports for international travel.
Right.
So the whole world is going in this direction. Pretty much every government has its own plans, but we all are kind of moving the direction of China, like you said, where if you speak out against government policy or you do basically anything that leads you to be labeled as a bad citizen by the government, then they can reach into your account and do anything they want to with your money. They can ban you from travel. They can prevent you from buying things they don't want you to buy. And that's already out there in China.
Yeah.
And we're moving that way here. This is going to be the next decade is going to be a borderline civil war between people who don't want this to happen and the people who are hell-bent on imposing it on us. So fascinating time. And I'm kind of too old for a civil war. Wish it would have happened.
And I'm older than you, John. I'm older than you, John. We've only got a couple of minutes left here, and I want to just touch on the central bank, the Fed. Some people are starting to believe that with the dollar having gotten so strong with the higher interest rates, that actually the Fed may be already starting sort of a silent pivot. And Michael Oliver talked about how there seems to be some intervention to bring the dollar down, which has been, I think, bullish for gold, in addition to what's going on in the crypto space, perhaps. But do you see, what are your thoughts on the dollar and gold now?
Well, I think we're heading into a recession quickly.
Yeah.
Housing has tanked in the U.S. Car prices are starting to fall. A lot of industrial commodities are way down from their previous highs. Look at lumber, and big tech is laying people off in the thousands. So I think the economy is already slowing down. And I think the Fed sees that, but they don't feel able to pivot in any meaningful way because they're still so terrified of inflation. But I think by mid-2023, the economy will take away any doubts in the minds of the central banks of the world, and they'll go back to easing by then.
They'll go to easing even if we have high inflation, John.
They'll have to, because the alternative will be a collapse into some kind of 1930s-style deflationary depression, and they don't want that at all costs. They will accept anything other than
anything but a depression. Yeah, they lose control that way, and they want control, which is why they're probably looking at cryptocurrencies or digital currencies. We're just about out of time, though. But bottom line, I guess longer term, the question is, what's the best safe haven? U.S. Treasuries, John. If rates come down, U.S. Treasuries would be great. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Treasury paper will probably do pretty well in what's coming, but I think silver looks great. Because for two things. One is there's a big drain on the exchanges now where silver is being taken off the exchanges, which means there might be a shortage at some point. And then the Silver Institute just came out and said there would be a big silver deficit this year. In other words, the mines of the world will not produce enough silver to completely cover the demand for silver. So you got a couple of things pointing in the direction of silver, and it's a tiny, tiny market that can just spike if a little bit of money flows in. So I like silver as an aggressive speculation right now because it's liable to double or triple if some of this stuff plays out.
I think you're right, John. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your thoughts. Always great to have you.